everybody. If I'd like to, are we ready to go, Karen? Good morning, everybody. If I could bring the meeting to order and welcome you to this licensing committee meeting on the 12th of March. Do I have any apologies and substitutions?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we've had apologies from Councillor Keith Horgan, Councillor Mark Inskip and Councillor James Lay, and Councillor Bill Hunt is substituting for Councillor Keith Horgan.
Sorry, I have an apology from Councillor Alison Whelan as well.
I think Councillor Trapp might be held up in the traffic.
I believe he's on his way.
Okay,
yes.
well, we look forward to seeing him. If he's not careful, he might miss it. Do we have any declarations of interest? No. Is everybody happy for me to sign the minutes of the last committee meeting on the 20th of November as a true record? Perfect. I have no chair's announcements, so now I'll hand the meeting over to Stuart so we can discuss primate licensing.
Thank you, Chair. I almost feel like I should apologise to members for calling you out, because it isn't likely to take long, as unfortunately DEFRA have not yet provided all of the information that we really need, but we still have a duty to introduce this legislation, and that's what we're here to do this morning. So, as I say, the issue here is to update members on the introduction of new primate licensing scheme, and this came about in 2024. DEFRA, using powers granted to them by the Animal Welfare Act 2006, created the Animal Welfare Primate Licenses England Regulations 2024. And these regulations introduce a primate licensing scheme. They set strict rules to ensure that only private keepers who can provide zoo-level welfare standards will be able to keep primates in their domesticated properties. They commence on the 1st of April 2025, hence why we've had to call you here today. Otherwise, I would have pushed it back and joined it up with other items. And then the enforcement part of the regulations come into effect on the 1st of April 2026. So there's a period where those who have primates that will need this license obviously have some time to get things in order before the enforcement provisions kick in. And obviously, from our point of view, we're on hand should we need obviously to provide any advice to people. Now, we have contacted all of the veterinary surgeries in our area and bordering, and been informed that they do not have any primates on their registers at this point in time. So we don't believe the impact of this regulation is going to have anywhere. Well, I don't think it's going to have any real impact to us at all. Certainly not like the regulations for breeding and boarding, etc. that obviously members have been appraised of in the past. But as I say, nonetheless, it is still essential that we're in a position to be able to enforce it when that time comes, but also to administer it should somebody come to us or move into our area who's come from a different area. So it's not optional in that way. And that framework will follow pretty much the same as the 2018 regulations for animal welfare. There will be statutory guidance coming down the road. I say, unfortunately, I think this is going to be a bit like pavement licensing. We're back in the COVID era, where it was announced about 7 days before it came into effect, I believe, at that point. So yeah, we're waiting on that, but at the point of publishing the report, that's not available, and it's still not available as we sit here. The regulations themselves set out a specific application process. It requires an inspection to be carried out prior to an application being determined. Again, very, very much the same as the 2018 animal welfare regs that we already deal with. There's a requirement for further inspection to take place at least once during the currency of a license, where an issue is for more than 12 months. These licenses can be issued for up to 3 years. So obviously, if it's only for 12 months, you wouldn't have to do an interim inspection. But if you issued one for 24 months, you would have to do an annual inspection. Again, that kind of mirrors the rules with riding establishments that have to have an annual inspection. The inspections must be conducted by a suitable person, which is defined in the regs as being a veterinarian, or any other person who in the view of the local authority is suitably qualified and competent to carry out the inspection. So we're looking here that we will have a vet who's got experience with primates. Clearly, would be the sort of people would be having do the inspections, and then they would be accompanied by an officer who's got a relevant sort of inspecting qualification, which is a BTEC level 3 inspector's qualification that I am one other member of staff within the council hold. So we would accompany them should those inspections be undertaken. Excuse me. Once issued, the licenses, as I say, last up to 3 years. And 3 years is the default unless the applicant requests a license to be issued for a shorter period. They may be varied voluntarily to introduce additional species or alter the level of primates on the properties. If they're originally licensed for 3 and they end up with 5, they can vary the license accordingly in that way. So they're quite flexible. And an application fee may be charged. And Section 12 of the regulations also permits the fee to be charged for the required inspections. So we will be separating the sort of inspection and application fees because, again, if somebody came to us who had, say, 20 primates, a much larger site, the veterinary costs of the inspection is going to be obviously far more substantial than somebody who may have a small capuchin monkey in isolation living in their house. So the idea is that the inspection fees will be separate. They will be on a case-by-case basis, and it will all be pre-agreed and paid directly by the applicant. We're also required to provide information to the Secretary of State on an annual basis. Again, that's just mirrors what we have to do already with the existing 2018 regs. And as I say, we can cover those costs. They won't be substantial costs, obviously, but we can cover those costs in with the fees as well. So paragraph 4.6 just sets out in a table the estimated cost recovery fees we believe will be necessary. And these will be reviewed annually when all the discretionary licensing fees are reviewed. At this point in time, they do mirror the animal welfare process that we have already with the application fee and maintenance fee, depending on the length of license that's issued. And then, as I say, the separate inspection fee at the end. There is a degree of kind of guesswork based around obviously what we already do in these figures, and they will be reviewed. So if we do end up getting applications, then obviously we will be able to review that. But clearly, if we don't get applications, it will be quite difficult to review those fees, obviously, because there will still be background work we have to do. We'll still have to have a policy, and we'll still obviously have to maintain the website and a presence as such, in that way. But clearly, that's a lot lower than the actual fee. But we need to have a fee higher than those base levels. So if we do get an application, we're not running at a loss. So they're the factors. When anything new is introduced, it's very difficult to set those fees. So financial implications on this really, so the impact is likely to be very, very minimal, but it does obviously bring costs to the licensing authority and to those who will be captured by the new regulations. But the actual regulations themselves, I would say, as I just set out, provide us to the ability to charge a fee. That fee has been set or proposed in paragraph 4.6, can be reviewed later on. And it's just important that we get that balance right, because obviously we want people, should they need these applications, to apply and not be put off by an incredibly high fee. So it's a very brief report, but as I say, important. So we get a decision on this, mainly on the fee side. Obviously, the regulations are in force, but so we're in a position to have everything in place for the 1st of April this year. That's the end of my report, but obviously I can answer any questions members have.
Thank you, Stuart. Oh, Gareth, your hand went up really quick. Oh, lots of hands going up. All right, okay. So I'm sorry, I saw Gareth first. I don't know if you were quicker. Then Christine and Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Does the licence apply to an individual or to a premises And if these aren't, if the either of them change, does it need a new license? How does it actually work?
Yeah, so it's to an individual and the premises. So if somebody moves to a different premises, they have to be re-inspected and re-licensed at the new site, because a lot of this is around the sort of the welfare, and that comes down to facilities. So obviously, if you've gone out and inspected premise A and they've got everything fantastic, and then they move to a different premises, you need to be assuring yourself that those facilities there are meeting the conditions of the license. So yes, it's to an individual and to the premises. So yeah.
Gareth almost asked what I was thinking about. A primate is so nearly, or a human being, that does the person, I hate the word owner, or the keeper, or whatever, do they have to be assessed to prove that they are a fit and suitable person? Because I have this feeling that a primate has more of a mental capacity, perhaps than, say, a horse or a dog or something of that nature.
Indeed, Councillor, and a good question. And yes, they do. They will be vetted as part of the inspection process. They will have to have relevant and skills in that way. And obviously, if we're not certain that they are a suitable person to be, keeping the animals that they're looking to keep, then we would look to refuse those licenses. Yeah. Now there is an appeal route there with all of these regulations and the previous 2018 regulations for animal welfare, which is through the first tier tribunal. Yes, essentially it's the same process as it is with those other animal welfare regs, where if you don't feel that they've got the relevant skills to be a dog breeder, then you wouldn't issue a license to them, and this will be the same with the primates.
Yeah, I feel it's more a case of, as well, empathy. That's the word I was after.
Indeed, and that's what we look for when we do our animal inspections. For I mentioned dog breeding because obviously it's a bit more full on than say dog boarding, in that way. But yes, we will be looking at that side of things as well.
Martin.
Thank you, Chair. You may have covered it with Gareth Wilson's answer, but the fees, is it per primate or per property?
It's per license, yeah. So the reason the maintenance fee and the application fee essentially doesn't really make much difference to us, whether there's one or 100, arguably, because that's just covering the cost of putting it onto the system, and whether you type 1, 10 or 100 in is going to be the same sort of cost to us. But the inspection is where the variance in the fee will occur. So so somebody who's got one small primate on their license will have a very low inspection fee, probably with travel time, maybe a couple of hours. Whereas obviously if we're there for an entire day, because they're assessing a lot of animals, then the inspection fee is which will go up.
The only reason I ask is that back in the day when you had to have a dog license, it was per dog, not per owner.
No, this will, as I say, is mirroring the existing 2018 regs, and it will be a site specific license. But as I say, we are separating the administrative sort of aspects from the inspection cost, so that those who have minimal inspection time will pay less than those who obviously have a larger organisation in that way.
John. Oh, then Gareth wants a second bite.
First of all, I'd like to apologise for arriving late, but I was sent all the way around the Fen roads because there was a hold up. Prick below here I came, but there I was. I was going to, first of all, looking at this, there's one thing that was very clear. I'm never going to be a primate owner. It sounds very complicated. So thank you very much for doing all this. The fees, is there comparison with others here, with other licensing authorities? Is it, or is it that we set out? I've got a number of questions.
Councillor, for the answer to that first one is the fees are set locally by the council, discretionary, and these we don't look at what other authorities are doing because all of their costs profiles to be cost recovery are completely different to ours. What we have done is look to see, you know, how long we believe the processing aspect of putting it onto the system, getting it off the system, how many FOIs and other associated things we might get from a maintenance point of view, and obviously correlated that across with our existing riding establishment, boarding establishments and exhibiting licenses and that we have. So that's where we've essentially mustered these figures from as an estimation. It's very difficult, as I said a moment ago, to get an exact figure on something that's brand new, and especially when you haven't got a line of people queuing up to apply for them. Because obviously, if you have a line of people queuing up, it becomes very apparent very quickly whether your costs are right or wrong. You know, and this may take some time to know whether we've got it right or wrong. But I do believe that it fairly reflects the amount of time that we are going to spend on it. And I say it's loosely in line with the other types of animal welfare licensing that we deal with. And then, as I say, by separating the fee off, which is exactly the same process we do for dangerous wild animal applications, of which we have none of those at the moment either. But we separate the inspection fee for those because they're very, very specific. You know, if you've got somebody who wants to have an entire room dedicated to every type of spider or snake that's going to kill you as it looks at you, then you need somebody very qualified to be able to go in and assess that. So we separate the inspection fee. The same with zoos, because zoos have to have an inspection regime which is set out by the APHA. It's a very prescribed sort of process, and we have to have that separated off because again, it can be, I can give you an example. We do have one zoo. It is due its inspection very shortly. And because the vet who has done it historically is no longer able to do it and a different vet's being used, their travel time to site is longer by about 3 hours, I think, in total with the return journey. Well, about 3 hours is their 3 hours at the APHA rate. So there's no way that those two inspections would be the same price purely because the vet's got to travel further to do it. And that's how it is. So with these, because they are a very specialist area, it is likely that the vets that are inspecting will have to come from further afield. And obviously, if they're then there for longer, it will be a bigger cost. And so we've tried to kind of set the fee structure out with an eye on all of the animal welfare fees that we currently have and the structures we have to create something that we hope is going to work. And obviously, we will, as we always do at this council, we will just keep an open mind to it all, and then obviously look forward and see on an annual basis, if it does need to be amended, and then we'll amend it.
Microphone.
The appendix, private license conditions, presumably that's not your wording, is it? That's taken off some.
Yeah.
Because there's certain sort of questions there as well.
Yeah. So councillor, on that note, Schedule 1, page 17, which are the licence conditions, that is lifted straight from the regulations. Those members who have been around longer will appreciate that prior to 2018, animal welfare licensing, we were able to set local conditions. We generally followed the Lay Corps' model guidance conditions, but we could set our own. And when the 2018 animal welfare regs came in, a whole raft of general and specific conditions came, and we can't deviate from them, add to them in any way, shape or form. And these regulations have done exactly the same and put this schedule. So all I've done is lifted that straight from the regulations. So they're there for everybody to see.
They need a little bit of tweaking.
Have you got your teacher head on there, your professor head on, John? You're rational.
I couldn't possibly comment on the way that DEFRA decides to put together their statutory instruments, but you know, it does follow again some of the inconsistencies that are in the 2018 regs.
Gareth.
Thank you. As this is a new piece of legislation, might there be people who living in East Cambs who might have, you know, a monkey or something in their possession, wouldn't necessarily realise that they've got to have a licence for it? So how are we going to make sure that people know about this change in the legislation?
So I'll be working with comms, you know, to promote it. As I said right at the beginning, we have gone to all of the veterinary surgeries in our area and bordering our area to see if they've got any anyone on their registers who has a primate who will fall within the scope. So obviously we could contact them via their veterinary surgery. So the answer to the point really is, at this point in time, if there is anybody in our district, they're already irresponsible because they haven't registered that with a vet. Which makes you sort of think that no matter how much comms we do, they're probably likely to try and stay under the radar. I think we will do our bit. We'll do what we always do. Again, we'll do the comms. The press will do their bit, because I think it will become more apparent as this goes through this next year, especially when we get beyond 2026, when the enforcement powers come into effect. There'll be, I think, cases coming into the press. And like with a lot of other areas of licensing, I think it'll be complaint driven. You know, that somebody will get wind of something, you know, and we'll find out from that, and then we'll go out, as we've done historically, and serve warrants and find out if there is any truth to the allegations.
Sorry, Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Is there a crossover as well with these licenses? Like some primates are dangerous animals as well as primates, and also does a zoo have to have separate licenses for their primates now, as well as a zoo license and the dangerous animals?
That's a very good question. It's my understanding at this point that those who are operating under a zoo license will not need this license, but those who have a dangerous wild animals license will need this license as well. Now, that's something I think, you know, licensing officers across the country, across England, where this is going to be coming into effect, didn't really agree with that. I think, you know, that one's probably enough, you know, but yeah, the way it's been worded is there is that crossover because most of the primates are likely to be on the Schedule 4 section of the Dangerous Wild Animals Act, and therefore, yes, at this point in time, whether we have further guidance as such, you know, coming, like I said, it hasn't been published yet, but if we get that, then that might say something different. But at this point in time, yes, for some, most, in fairness, would have to have both the dangerous wild animals and the primate one.
Any further questions for Stuart? I just have one question. Are other authorities obliged to notify us if their current holder of a primate license moves out of their area and into ours?
Again, good question. And at this point in time, no. No, my understanding is that there isn't any national register or any requirement. The one thing I would say on that is in my role, voluntary role, I have to say, as the chair of the Eastern region of the Institute of Licensing, we operate very closely with our neighbouring authorities around here. We have meetings with my counterparts at Fenland and South Cambs, etc. So we would notify each other. So if they were coming from further afield, we wouldn't know. But if there were any in the other areas, we would find out about that.
It's a shame. I think it's the sort of thing one feels there ought to be a national register of primate keepers, so that if they do start to move around the country, that they can be kept a closer eye on. But as you say, I'm sure if somebody moved into my house with half a dozen monkeys, I would, or next door to me, I think we would all be fairly rapidly alerted to the fact, and complaints would ensue. Right, okay, so no further questions. Do we want to debate this, or are we happy to move straight to the vote? Are we happy to approve the fees? Do we think they need looking at? Happy to approve. All those in favour then? That's unanimous. Wonderful. We now move on to your update, Stuart. Fire away.
Thank you, Chair. So yeah, just a verbal update. This will be brief. We are obviously heading into the year-end period at the moment, where our attention is on the financials for the year-end, for appraisals and that side of things. But also we are making progress with the expansion project that I've mentioned in previous meetings. That is moving at pace, and a further update will come to members hopefully in time for the next meeting for that one. All I can say is at this point we are looking to recruit some additional staff. I've got interviews all tomorrow and Friday to ensure that we're in a position to deal with the level of work that's going to be, you know, coming into the licensing authority as we move forwards. So exciting times in that way. As far as sort of the performance of the department over the last year, obviously I've given regular updates, but financially we're in a very good position. You know, in that way we continue to sort of float around the cost recovery mark, and with this expansion, I think that will be a given moving forwards. So there isn't really sort of much else to update members on. Numbers of licenses across the board are sort of static. They're kind of where they are. We lose some and we gain some. We obviously are aware of you know, the ongoing cost of living crisis. From conversations we have in our various groups, we are keeping an eye on the potential impacts of the last budget, which a lot of the measures come into force obviously from the 1st of April, and how much of an impact that will have on hospitality, you know, with the increased NI contributions and things like that. So, you know, at the end of the day, if businesses aren't able to be profitable, then they won't need licenses either. So we will be keeping an eye on that. We are also, I mentioned it at the last meeting, the tobacco and vapes bill is still heading its way through the parliamentary process at the moment. That has the potential to be far more profound to us than primate licensing. At this point in time, there is still a lot of uncertainty about whether the licensing authorities are going to be picking up the administration and enforcement, or whether we will be doing administration and trading standards will be doing enforcement. So we're not quite sure, you know, how the final act of Parliament is going to present itself. But if the good money as such is suggesting that the obvious place for it to sit would be the licensing authority. We deal with personal licenses and premises licenses, obviously for alcohol and entertainment. Just about everywhere that sells alcohol will sell tobacco products of some description. So it makes sense in my mind for it to come to us. And because of the scale, as I say, I would probably, I'm not a gambling man at all, but I would probably say 80% of places which hold a premises license will probably need a tobacco and vapes license as well. And then there'll be standalone shops that sell tobacco and vape products that don't have alcohol, but they will also fall underneath it. So I think you know, there will certainly be a resource issue with the tobacco and vapes bill when it comes in. And then still also on the horizon is the special treatment licensing, which is all the sort of tattooing and skin piercing, effectively anything that interferes with the skin of a human body. That's again, at the moment in this authority, as I've mentioned before, it's dealt with by our commercial team. But that seems to be following the same process of a personal license for those who are doing it, depending on what they're doing, whether they're tattooing or ear piercing, etc. And then a premises license to ensure that the premises are sort of hygienic, etc. So again, it's very similar, something we're very used to dealing with, and there may be a decision made to move that to licensing, but at this point we don't know. But it's an exciting time in a way, you know, with all the different things that are going on that impact licensing, you know, and we just remain, you know, sort of here to help members, to help the public, and help those in business as well to make the right decisions. So that's probably all I can say at the moment, Chair.
Thank you, Stuart. Exciting times ahead for us indeed. Now that brings us on to the forward agenda. I see no meeting in for April. We just meeting, are we cancelling April?
At this point in time, Chair, I don't believe anything is going to be needed. Later this year, I apologize, I should mention this. It is Licensing Act policy review year.
Yes.
So that will come to a future. And as I say, I think it will be important that the expansion detail is provided to members as well at another point, but I think that will probably be May.
Right, okay, so we can clear our diaries for April then, for the April meeting, and I look forward to seeing you all on the 14th of May and at 10:30, 10:31, according to my watch. I will bring the meeting to a close. Thank you very much indeed. Bye-bye.